Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to call to order the March 20th, 2019 Select Board meeting to order. We have one change, addition to the agenda. There's one thing that was not reasonably anticipated. Under Town Manager's Report, we're going to add a second item. This is regarding the legal representation of Surfside Crossing. Libby?
Okay, this board is being video and audio recorded. As an announcement, Public Works Director is holding a public information session tomorrow. This is in a series of information sessions regarding downtown sidewalk improvements tomorrow, Thursday, March 21st at 6 p.m. here in this room, 6 to 8. The public is invited to learn more about that project.
I think there was some miscommunication, confusion online that was lured to my attention today that under the direction of the planning board, the DPW is reconstructing all of Main Street. It was kind of a flyer that was going out. I wanted to make sure that it's not under the direction of the planning board or the planning department. This is driven by DPW and town administration. And tomorrow night from 6 to 8, what Libby was referring to is about the entire sidewalk plan in addition to Upper Main Street. Just want to try to clear that up. Is there any public comment here tonight that's not on the agenda? David? Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. David Gray, Sewer Director. I just want to make some announcements on the SHMO, Nantucket Harbor Plus project. The project's quickly coming to a close. All testing and inspections have been completed to date, so we're just about there to be accepting that from the contractor. A couple of just big things is catch basin cleanings for the entire project will be starting this weekend. So there's going to be a lot of heavy equipment and trucks in all the project areas, cleaning all the storm drains and doing inspections. So if anyone gets alerted to a lot of noise or whatever like that, the contractor will be out there over the weekend. The roadway reclamation contractor is mobilizing on the 21st, and road reclamation on all roadways is going to start on the 25th. And I have the whole list of the roads here just so that everyone knows, but this is in preparation for full paving that's going to be taking place towards the end of the month and in the beginning of April.
Dave, what reclamation is what?
Reclamation is, instead of just doing a skim on a mill and just taking a couple inches off, we're completely grinding the roads down to 8 inches depth, regrading them, reshaping them, rolling them, compacting them, and prepping them for pavement.
Okay.
Some of the roadways are going to maintain a gravel base and a dirt base until they can be paved. It could be a few days, it could be a couple of weeks. We don't know exactly, depending on how quickly the paver comes in behind us. But the roadways will be fully maintained during that time. The contractor will have somebody on island regrading the roads as they need to be regraded and repaired. So, but the roads to be affected, in no order, just so everyone knows, Bayberry, Tacoma, Rugged, Tashma Lane, McLean Lane, Vesper Lane in its entire length, from Hummock Pond Road all the way to the intersection at Surfside Road, Hussey Farm, Meadowview, Pond Road, Wamasquid Place, Pinkham Circle, Friendship Lane. It's a partial just in the area of the construction of the sewer, and then the entire length of Monomoy Road from Milestone, where the DOT project ends and where our project begins, to the corner of Berkeley Street and on the corner. We're also going to be relocating the roadway in Monomoy, so a lot of activity coming up in the next few weeks. The road reclamation should take approximately 2 weeks, depending on weather or whatever else happens. But I just needed everyone to know that this is what's coming, and it's going to start on Monday. So,
Did you say Tashma? Wasn't that was redone by the?
Tashma is one of the late. We have to reclaim the road. We did all the sewers, but now we're going to go in and regrade, grind them all down and pave them.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just wanted everyone to know, and the project's coming to a close hopefully soon, so.
Thank you, David. It's good that David's mentioning the road work, but at your meeting next week, you're going to get a much fuller presentation overview of spring road work. This is a drop in the bucket compared to all the other road work that's going on. So we're going to be reviewing a map and trying to show the public where the various projects are taking place and when.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Members of the board, thank you. Andy Lowell, Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board. Please clarify for me if you brought up at the last meeting filling Bill Blount's seat.
Excuse me, this is on the agenda for next week.
It is? Okay. If I could speak on behalf of the board, we spoke last night about it, and as you know, Dave Franzuto is interested in filling his seat. There's one more year left on his term, and we unanimously are interested in seeing Dave fill that seat, Mr. Franzuto. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. Any other comments tonight that's not on the agenda? Brooke?
Hi, Brooke Moore, 2 Henderson's Drive. I'd like to invite the public to an informational session on Monday night, the 25th, at the Athenaeum at 5:30 p.m. on Article 37, the Neighborhood First Housing Program. It's sponsored by Ripple Effect, and all are welcome. It's going to be a presentation and Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments tonight that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, there's no new business that I know of. Approval of minutes, payroll warrants, and treasury warrants.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Pending contracts. Libby, anything we need to know? Or any questions from the board?
Move approval.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, consent items. We have a resignation from Council on Aging. Is there a motion?
Motion to accept and to send a letter of thanks.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. Citizen Department request. Nantucket Cottage Hospital request for,
I'm going to recuse.
okay, Dawn's going to recuse, request for waiver of sewer connection permit fees for new hospital located at 57 Prospect Street. And Libby, do you have any information, or the board have any questions?
The request is in your packet.
Okay.
The hospital representative seems to be here, and the sewer director has a recommendation in your packet as well. In a nutshell, I think it's safe to say that the permit is approximately $56,000 under normal fee charging. There is a request for a waiver, and the recommendation of staff is to waive all but $5,000 worth to help cover administrative expenses related to review of the permit.
Okay. Any thoughts? Mr. Duke, do you want to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's perfectly fine. We appreciate all the support that the board has given us with respect to the waivers. We had included an expectation that we would pay for the review fees, and $5,000 would be fine. There's a minimum permit fee which we had agreed to pay, and thought the $5,000. We said please add to it to the extent for reviews are needed. So we would appreciate the support. As you know, we're a nonprofit hospital, and we're trying to move forward to reach closure. So we appreciate it.
Any thoughts from the board?
I think we should approve the recommendation from sewer commissioner, sewer director.
Okay.
And I would make that as a motion.
Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
I have one thought. The town should be very supportive of the hospital. All of us should, and we're very lucky to have a new hospital paid for by very generous people, the majority of it. One question I had is, we kind of argue over $100,000 of who's going to pay to transfer mental health patients off island. It's not the town's job, it's not the hospital's. And then the social services that the CRC funds is, if we can't fund it all, the hospital may not be able to provide it. So I'm just curious if waiving $50,000, if some of that can go. I know it's not like my coffee shop where money goes in one account and comes out. It's very complicated. But is there waiving $50,000 and then not being able to provide social services just feels funny to me? Or the fact that we might not be able to next year if the CRC can't fund it at all? So I just want to encourage more collaboration from the hospital and the town to try to figure this out. I'm very supportive of this waiver. Rita, did you have?
No, I think
Okay.
that's I think that's a good point, and it is something to realize that this is critical services, critical infrastructure, but that it would be great to have that collaborative approach.
Thank you. Anything else? Take a vote.
That's fine.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, number 2, New Singular Wireless, PCS LLC, it's a request for grant location applications for telecommunication wires and wireless attachments. There's like 12 different locations. Hi.
Good evening. Edward Parry, P-A-R-E. I'm an attorney at Brown Rudnick. We're here representing AT&T. We have applications for 10 grant of locations. Eventually, we're looking to build out 12, but at this point, we have 10 ready to go. They're basically small antennas attached to the top of utility poles. They're about 2 feet high. There's a box that goes onto the telephone pole itself. We provided some application materials with some plans depicting all of the attachments with our compliance with the FCC standards. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but you have the list of locations where we're proposing to attach. As I said, I'd be happy to answer any questions of anyone on the
Any
Select
questions from the board
No.
or the public?
Yeah, I actually wanted to talk about the hospital, but I guess you didn't see me back there, so I guess I'll go with this one. I looked at your paperwork that you submitted, and according to your physicist, it's showing a 40-watt output on these antennas. And then it says for the attending manufacturer, go to the model number and all that and see Appendix A. And so I look at Appendix A, and the LTE is putting out a max power per port of 150 watts. And then you have another one of 100 watts at 4 ports. And then you have the 5G at 10 watts of 2 ports. So if you add that all up, it comes out to 1,020 watts. One of these is going to be placed at 16 India Street, which is right across the street from the hospital thrift shop, number 1. And number 2, it is located 7 feet from a house, 30 feet up in the air. Now, you're putting out 1,020 watts of RF radiation, and I worked with physicists before, and RF radiation affects young cells and old cells of human bodies, number 1. And number 2, it's 7 feet from a house. I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that, we can't have a cell in that area, but it's located 7 feet. You have another one that's 25 feet from a house. On New Mill Street, one's located 19 feet from a house. A little bit too close for comfort, number 1. Number 2, once they get approved for these installations, do you have to come back here for when you upgrade to 7 generation, 8 generation, or 9 generation? When we go into the higher frequencies for the faster bandwidth? I mean, once they get approved, does that mean you can come and just put anything up without an approval, or do you have to come back to the board? Oh, I'm sorry, Thomas Beretta, Tosh Mullane, sorry.
So could you answer
For you?
there's a couple questions in there? You want to go ahead?
I'll do my best. So we comply with the FCC standards. As you see from the report I submitted, even at 3 feet away from the antenna, you're just greater than 10% of the maximum emission. So at 7 feet, it's less than that. Our report shows that we comply, and the FCC has jurisdiction with respect to that. So with respect to emissions, all we need to show is we comply, which we did, and these are very low powered. With respect to the changes, I think it depends on the change of the physical equipment. So we always have to comply with the FCC regulations. That is always clear with respect to emissions. If the antenna is going to get bigger or the equipment cabinet on the pole is going to get bigger, then I would assume that the select board is going to want to see this when we go to make those changes. The FCC has regulations out that say it has to be if it's substantially the same, it can be swapped out. So if the equipment's getting bigger, we have a 2-foot antenna. If we're going to put up an 8-foot antenna, we're coming back to see you for sure.
Tom, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, I understand the FCC, and I understand it's the Telecommunication Act of 1996 that brought all this, and part of that act says that you can't ban locations by site or neighborhood detractment or anything like that. But as far as the hazardous part, you're putting it 7 feet. I mean, is there another pole on India Street further down that might be 15 feet from a house? Because 7 feet, 30 feet up, second floor window, bedroom, that's pretty close.
Well, there is no second floor bedroom on that particular house, but as long,
I'm sorry, on the India Street, that's a
Up at-
three-story house.
up at 30 feet, if you take a look at the picture, I think it's a flat roof and the antenna goes above. But notwithstanding, we need to comply. We do comply, whether it's 7 feet or 30 feet. The key is that the FCC regulates it, we comply, and they're very low power. So we're talking about 2%, 5% of the maximum emissions. We could go up to 100, but as I show in the depiction, at 7 feet away would be somewhere between 2 and 5%.
Okay, the other question I have is, are you going to be labeling the telephone poles with the blue placards that say emission radiating antenna, keep 3 feet away?
We do, so.
Okay, so when they came back out and did all the ones before, you guys put the placards on, all those placards disappeared within a week.
Well, if we have to replace them, we do have to show if there's going to be RF signal in the area. I don't know if they're all blue, some are green, some are yellow, some are red. But we put the appropriate signage on. There's not going to be any emissions at the base, which are going to exceed the emission standards. So, we do have to replace them if they get stolen, but they are posted.
So, okay, so you do have to replace the ones that are already in.
For AT&T, I don't know that we have it in.
The AT&T is the DAS, so it's the only one that has it, but,
And I'll bring that back to them. If there are signs missing, I'll have them take a look.
okay.
Thank you, Tom, for doing your
Yep.
homework.
He did.
Any other questions from the board?
I have just a general question for staff more than for these guys. Are any of these poles that we're going to want to move, are they in the house move path, or are they blocking existing sidewalks? Because if we add something to them, we're just adding more reason not to move that pole. So did anyone go through and vet the locations and determine whether they're going to make house moves more difficult or make passage on the sidewalks more difficult? I looked at a lot of them and they seemed all right, but I didn't look at all of them.
I'm not sure if we conducted that detailed of a review, but I don't think they would impact house moves at all because they're not attached to any of the wires. And as far as moving poles go, it would be no more of a problem than any other pole adjacent to it when it came time to move it. As far as I know.
Anything else? No questions, or is there a motion?
Motion to approve this application.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Tom, did you want to speak? Thank you.
Thank you.
Passed, yeah. Did you want to speak on the hospital? I really didn't see him, sorry. I know it's already passed, but feel free to give us your comments. Sorry about that, I really didn't see you.
Okay. I was just going to make the comment that we're Thomas Barrett at Tosh Lane. I was going to make the comment that we've waived the building fees, we've waived the filing fees, we've waived pretty much all the fees that so far for that building. And this is a $56,000 connection fee that they already connected to without actually cutting the check and coming to you first to say, can we have the waiver? So somehow that kind of got connected without actually paperwork being done correctly. And I believe that that was before David took over the sewer. So the previous administration people that took care of that. Anyway, so $56,000 is nothing because they're going to be pumping sewage for the rest of that building's life. And that's a privilege for them to do it. And I mean, it's nothing for them for the amount of flow that's going to be coming out and for the amount of flow that we have to have. And the fact that we had to, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that we have to put in a new pipe down Surfside to go to the thing because it's upgraded and all that. So we have to upgrade our infrastructure to help support that down the road. And it's like, $56,000 is nothing to them. And we just gave it away for free, or for $2,000, I think it was, or
$5,000, yeah.
$5,000. We waived all the filing fees for pushing paper across desks, but this is actual product that's going out the pipe that we have to take care of indefinitely. And that was my concern.
Mr. Chairman? Couple things, there's a lot going on there, but with regard to the building permit fees, they paid $20,000. The fee was reduced. And they will pay an ongoing sewer user fee. That's not being waived, it's just
The
the
privilege.
connection fee.
I understand that they're gonna pay the ongoing fees, but any person on this island that has to connect to the sewer has to pay, I believe, $8,000 as a connection fee for an average of maybe 5, 6 toilets, and you've got a whole hospital for 56,000, so if you do the ratio, it still was a good deal.
I think the connection fees are
Well,
2,000.
they're 2,000, but he may be referring to the privilege fee.
Right. I think I said privilege fee. I didn't mean to say that.
Yeah, and the other thing, Tom, that we're hoping is that, as Jason pointed out, we're hoping that there's some consideration of how much the town has done it when it comes time to talk about some other issues. So we're working in partnership with the hospital and, and we scratched their back tonight.
Okay. Move on to number 3. Don, you may return. This is a request regarding the Plagiarist film production on Nantucket, March 24th to April 11th. Amy's going to walk us through this.
Good evening. So tonight we actually have 2 films. Now, we haven't done this in a while.
Oh, I'm sorry, Amy.
Yeah.
I have to disclose that I did
Yep.
meet with the filmmakers in the coffee shop.
Great.
Ran into them, and they offered to maybe shoot external shots of
Correct.
the coffee shop.
Correct.
I signed a release form. I sort of disclosed that. Not
Right.
any money off of it.
Right, no, there's no financial gain
Might hit
off
the
of
cutting
that.
room floor.
Correct. Great. Thank you.
Are you gonna be in the film?
No.
So, just a quick background, which will apply to both of these. 3 years ago now, we redid the film regulations, kind of bringing it up to code or bringing it up to speed with a lot of other towns to deal with a lot of this filming coming to town, dealing with a lot of the disruption that comes with it to help us better manage these types of activities. So we just happened to this year get 2 films that are going to be going on about the same approximate time. The first one is going to be much smaller than the second, and we'll go through each one specifically. But as we put in these summaries for both, what we really look at for a film is obviously when they're going to be filming on public property, especially public sidewalks and streets of that sort of thing. But also, even if they're on private property or public property, there's going to be times where they're filming past our noise waiver, our noise ordinance of 10 p.m. So we're going to look at times when they need noise waivers. If they have generators, that's always something that will create noise in the neighborhood, even if they are filming in an interior property. We consider the types of trucks and equipment that they have. A lot of times they have these big box trucks that they're going to be parking downtown or even on private roads that might block emergency vehicles, things of that sort. So we look at all their equipment, the number of folks involved, where they're going to be setting up. Lighting could affect neighbors, things of that sort. So there's a whole bunch of things like that that we considered with both these films. We had meetings with the event work group, with the chief of police, with fire, with Erica, thankfully, who knows every street that's going to be blocked, every construction project, which is important when they're on certain streets. So that's kind of the process that we went through. We vetted all of these things. What we're asking tonight, I'll start with the first film, The Plagiarist, and those folks here tonight too for any questions. We've submitted the different locations. They specifically are asking for, I believe, 5 noise waivers. What I'd like to say is what we're asking for is approval of a filming permit. As I said, we've gone over the logistics with them. We'll be working with them. What we're going to be asking for is, and what we've asked for both of them based on our previous experience with films, is communication with us. Because as we know, the nature of the beast is constant change. That we get 48 hours notification for any major location changes, anything that requires a noise waiver, things of that sort. We can approve this and approve the locations and noise waivers as presented, but we need the ability to manage this permit. It's something we will post publicly for folks. We've also been very strict in the sense of a butter notification. even when they're on private property, that neighbors are notified, that we can verify they have notified neighbors when there's going to be lighting, any sort of noise, if any neighbor, and they've been good about this as far as any houses getting into shots, things of that sort. So we're really asking for communication, notification for changes of this permit. We do have permit change fees that we're going to apply should they be changing this permit after this vote this evening. A butter notification if we have disruption of any sort of businesses or services. There may be the ability to pull the permit if there are excessive violations. So that's what we're going to be asking for this evening. So any questions as presented?
I had one
Yeah.
on the, I was going to ask you what is the teeth you have to enforce this? And that's
Correct. In the, kind of the film regulations and permits and that sort of thing, we do have fees and regulations that require, obviously, if there's excessive changes after you approve the permit as submitted, we have fees that we can assess if there's any excessive, such as a liquor license or entertainment license, when we get excessive complaints that are verified complaints, if they are going outside the parameters of this permit, similar to violating one of those licenses, there we can suspend it, either have a hearing or deal with it at that prospect because it's a violation of those terms.
Thank you. Questions, thoughts from the board?
No, is this, you said we haven't looked at these in a while. I don't think we've looked at a film
Yeah.
request.
It's been a couple years.
Pardon? Yeah.
Not since when. I think one of these, the first company that we're dealing with, the Plagiarist, this is a much smaller production, and for instance, their generator is quite small. I don't really feel it's going to be quite an issue at all. The second movie is a company that has done several movies here, and what they do is they take students, and I'll get into that when they are here, so they've been here before. So a lot of this we base on our past experience, which has not necessarily been good with films, and that's not at all an indictment of those folks who are here tonight, but we're reacting to a lot of times we get this, oh, it's going to be great, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then I get calls from businesses are getting blocked, and people, there's noises, there's things of that sort. So we really kind of went through this. Yeah.
But you've improved this process a little bit, right?
Yes.
With the butters, and so it's better than it was
Correct.
3 or 4 years ago.
Correct. And God bless Erica here, who actually went through all of the locations to see where they were planning on parking trucks and things of that sort. And Lieutenant McVicker, too, with the police department saying, that's not going to work. Cars can't turn if you do that. So they responded with getting smaller vehicles that will help. And so we're working with them as far as how they're going to offload equipment downtown and not disrupt as much as possible.
Okay.
So I think a lot of effort went into it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of staff effort.
Yeah.
It's a lot of Erica's time, a lot of Marina's time, a lot of our time to really go through that. So we're trying to, and we've talked to them too, and films in general, about communicating with us a little bit earlier than
I
a
think
month
that-
out.
I think that hashtag, God bless Erica, is trending on Twitter right now. Thank you, Erica.
She did, because on her own time went through this, so which was helpful because certain streets you can't put 3 box trucks on the side of a street.
Right.
No one can turn. There's a truck route. She knows a house is going to be moved that week. One of these films is going through Daffodil Weekend, so that's things we have to really consider. And as Libby had mentioned, there's a lot of projects going on with street closures and things of that sort right now.
Okay.
So
We can take a vote or questions on the plagiarist, if there's a motion or.
And I just want to clarify, all the abutters have been notified at this stage.
the ones that we know of in
Okay.
these instances, yeah, and they've gotten obviously permission from property owners and things of that sort. So, but again, I like to say publicly for the public looking into this, we will post online on the website these addresses and noise waivers that are approved, so these things are happening. Also, there's one instance where they'll be shooting something that sounds like a gun. We have procedures where they need to call dispatch prior to shooting the gun and as soon as it's done, so we are aware of the time frame that this is happening. So
And the gun has blanks. Not
it has blanks, yes, not an actual gun, but, obviously we get calls and anytime someone thinks there's a gun going
Right.
off. So things of that sort, we've gone through each thing, any sort of special effects, lighting, things of that sort. So it's been quite a extensive process thus far.
I saw a hand up from the crowd for a couple comments. Just please keep them brief. Go ahead, Rhoda, and then Tom, you had, no?
For the record, Rhoda Weinman, I just wanted to add that Thomas Matthews, who is the filmmaker for The Plagiarist, is someone that I've known well for 15 years. I represented his parents when they bought their property here. He's not just someone that's shown up here to film and then disappear, and He's plays by all the rules. I think Amy will verify that everything he's been asked for, he's provided. His parents are both on the board of directors of the Nantucket Film Festival. His dad was on the board of the Nantucket AIDS Network. There's summer people here. They're people that have been involved in the community for 15 years, and I would just ask you to support that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would make a motion to approve all 3 requests for the plagiarist.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. On to the Sarah Lawrence College.
Correct. And now this is going to be a much larger production. As I mentioned before, Jay Craven, who has been doing these movies for several years, has done, Wetware and thank you, Peter and John, several years ago, so you might remember those names. And it's going to be much larger. Obviously, it's a teaching vehicle for these students. This year, Sarah Lawrence College is involved, and they've been great in working with us. They've been kind of thrown into the buzzsaw a little bit, but so we appreciate that. We went through that. But again, like I mentioned to them before, we've had issues, something this large, and just kind of shooting where, they need to get the shot when they need to get the shot. But again, this is going to be a much larger list of noise waivers. It has been changing. It changed today. Actor schedules changed, things of that sort. So it's a completely moving target that we're going to have to keep on throughout. And again, we'll communicate to the public as well what is going on. There's going to be stuff downtown. Again, they're who we worked with as far as limiting the vehicles. They're going to be downtown. They have worked with, both productions have worked with the yacht club, thankfully, to park their vehicles there after unloading. So they've worked that out, which is quite helpful. They have a larger generator, so that is something we're going to have to look at as far as some of these waivers. Yeah. And again, this goes through the end of April, which again, we're hitting Daffodil, so we're trying to stay away from the busy areas for that weekend too as well. So this is just like we've said to them, communication is absolutely key to us, because if something happens and they change it without communicating to us, can be a problem that could jeopardize the permit. Any questions? No.
Do you feel comfortable with this? Obviously.
Yeah, no, I do, and they know. And again,
if you and Erica feel comfortable, then
but it's again, and Erica again did a lot of legwork on this, as did Marina. So, what we said, all we can say is, you need to communicate with us. If something looks that it's going to interfere with some sort of street project, the police don't feel comfortable with it, or if we don't have the ability to provide a detail if it's needed, that needs to be listened to. That is very important, or else in the future of any future filming permits can be at risk too. So we just ask for respect for that and communication, honestly.
Matt?
How have they been the last couple of winters, this group?
Well, this group, specifically this school, is new into
I
this
know they
production
are, but,
company. The
yeah.
company itself, it's film. I mean, like I said, I lived in LA for a while. They just do what they're going to do. And unfortunately, like I've said to them in Nantucket, everything affects the community. Every little thing can disrupt business, especially now every single business downtown is getting ready to open. We have a ton of road projects. It's not easy. Next time they need to come 3 months out and say, we like to work with you on maybe doing some filming, instead of, hey, we're coming in 3 weeks to film for a month. The approach has to change in the future. The approach to us to work with us has to change.
Maybe there's a way for incentives. Like if you come in 3 weeks, it costs this much. You come
Yeah,
in 3
and
months, 'cause there has
it's
to be some
certainly
kind
going
of
to
incentive.
cost, yes. We certainly are. We're not going to, they've asked to waive fees in the past. We won't do that this
Yeah,
year.
sorry. Eric?
I just wanted to note that we conveyed to this specific group, our issues, and they've been very responsive. I mean, we had a meeting last Monday, and we basically nixed everything they brought to the table, and they came back on Thursday and had a completely revamped plan, and they really did their homework, and
They did.
I think that they will be very responsive with the conditions, so.
And they're working with some local folks and representatives, Joy here and others, which I feel is good, because when they're out there filming and they have a local with them who knows the business owners and knows folks, can deal with that or speak to them and be that buffer. So I think moving forward too, we like that, to have someone who is local who can deal with those situations. So I feel good about that and her presence there as well.
Michael Kopko, 5 North Water Street. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I guess just by way of sort of giving a reference for these guys, I've been literally living and working alongside of them for the last 2 months as the Sarah Lawrence program has been down at the White Heron Theater Company, and I can tell you that the folks running the program are very responsive, compliant, and communicative, and so I'd just like you to take that into consideration when you make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kopko. Any questions from the board? Motion?
I would make a motion to approve all 3 requests.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Amy, just stay up there
I'm
for a
still
while.
here.
Next,
It's
we
my
have
show tonight.
the licensing administration request for execution of 2019 seasonal population increase estimation
Correct.
form.
So in the past,
What
you all have not seen this. It's something that was estimated, a population was estimated, and I don't think it was understood in the past that it was actually supposed to be a vote. And then the ABCC made a nice little form that you had to sign, and we said, oh, you have to go through this. So that's why I don't think you've seen it in the past. An estimation was made, plus usually came up with an estimation of what the population, the seasonal temporary increase in population is as of July 10th, I believe, of every year. In the past, the number was 65,000, which wasn't really based on any sort of data. Now, what this affects is the quota for seasonal package stores, which I included kind of where we're at with that. And that'll, every 5,000, you can have one for seasonals. Annual package stores are based on the census that's done every 10 years. That will reset next year. So based on that, the only thing really that we've had recently is the data project that came out last year, I believe, the data platform that used a lot of different data to assess what the seasonal population was. And it came up with something that sounded more reasonable for us, between 41 and 45,000 people in the July to August hotspot there too. So my recommendation was at about 45,000. Again, this doesn't have to be the absolute positive, this is what our population is. They ask you to make an estimate with your best guess, and that to affect the quota. So based on what we had done in the past, 65,000, if we did 45,000, we'd only have 2 available. And then we would have 6 available, I believe, for 65,000, if I'm doing my math correct. So that's what it's going to affect, is what's available. You don't have to issue those licenses, but if you got applications for it, that's the maximum you could issue on Nantucket. Any questions of that sort?
Questions, comments? Motion?
But one thing I'd say is I think it's amazing that we have a number and that it's been based on statistics and research and some real.
Correct.
It was surprising to me that it was 45 and not 65 or 70.
Yeah.
But when you actually think about people are on vacation, they're not driving and parking at work for 8 or 10 hours, it kind of makes sense. So they're using the island more intensely and they're doing 3, 4, 5 things a day. So
Correct.
what we feel then.
What it feels like is different than what it is.
And they haven't counted everybody in the harbor yet, so.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it might be 50,000, but it's not
Correct.
65. That was one
Yeah.
point. And the other one is, if I understand the quota on annual, we're quite a bit over.
We're over on those for one of them. So if any were surrendered, you couldn't issue a new one. We don't have to get rid of what we have. But again, depending on what happens next year, 2020 with the census and what number comes up, that will reset itself. But yes,
Right.
because it was all kind of wonky there for a while. So I don't really know how that happened.
Right. And it's sort of, from a policy issue, what it sort of tells me is we're fully served. Because
Oh.
we've got, way, that's not meant to be a pun, but we're way over
Correct.
on our annual. And we should be thinking about being very careful about our seasonal, I would say, at this point.
Correct.
Until it kind of comes in line.
Correct.
So, anyway.
Yeah, especially with location. So we do have one available annual, which we'll deal with, I think, soon. We have an application, obviously, out for that one. That's beer and wine. So, and there's only one left. But this number tonight will affect the seasonal number, right? Yeah. Pick a number for the motion.
The motion of, or sorry, the population number.
Mhm.
So I would, okay. And is it the 45,000 or 45,500?
I just estimated at 45,000 since it's based on every 5,000 as far as what the quota is. It just seemed to be a simple, and they said it didn't have to be specific down to a person. It was just an estimate.
I would make a motion to accept 45,000 as the year, or as the seasonal population.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, on to public hearings. We'll open up the public hearing to consider 2019 seasonal liquor license renewals.
Yes. So this is a time of year that we do the liquor license renewals for the seasonals, which are the liquor licenses operational from April 1st to January 15th or a portion thereof. We do annuals in December. So this is just liquor. In December, we do all the other local licenses, entertainment, common vicular, and such. This is just through the state process. So again, as local licensing authority, you must vote to renew these liquor license annually, and this puts in motion the renewal process. This doesn't issue the licenses. They still must complete inspections, health inspections. We've kind of redone how the building and fire inspections are done, so that process has been changed to bring it all into kind of compliance and in order for seasonals as well, and then fees and insurance. So this will put that into process, and they will begin opening April 1st. And we have one license that is surrendered, and that is for Cowboys this year.
And what were the dates again, seasonal dates?
Seasonal dates are April 1st to January 15th or any portion thereof.
Now, we've talked in the past about whether that should be changed to April to November.
Correct. So there's two different ways you can do it. Seasonal is a lot more, and we're discussing this internally as well this week, actually. The state law is seasonals are either April 1st to November 30th or any portion thereof, or April 1st and January 15th. So they do actually break seasonals down, and that actually works for us because we have those that close, after the season, and those who stay open to stroll. And I think we're looking to, fee-wise, break it off at that point as well, too. Annual is a little bit tougher as far as tiering that, but
So we'll see a recommendation on a different fee schedule.
yes, correct. And that's what we're discussing internally to do that. Yeah, that's through the state law, MGL 138, breaks it down that way.
So we could pick one or two of those dates?
You can, and seasonal's easier, like they said, it's April 1st to November 30th or any portion thereof. So someone closes October 1st, that's fine. It's not like annuals, whereas we ask for permission to close for extended periods of time. Seasonal's a little bit different. Yeah, so I think that would work for us, actually.
Yeah, but by picking January 15th, what people open and close all the way up
Correct.
to January 1st.
And if we want to encourage people to be open during stroll and during the holidays, then that might be have a better fee than those who are just going to stay open through August or September.
But could the fee, sort of require continue to be open through the extent of it? If you're the
Right.
30th, you have to stay till the 30th, or you're the 15th?
That's what we're proposing.
Okay.
And for annual as well, to have a tiered system of that sense, which is different than everywhere else because we're encouraging people to stay open annually, so that might be less than someone who's open for a shorter period of time.
Right, and you
Yeah.
want to discourage people from skimming the cream on
Correct.
the big 2 weekends when everyone's struggling to stay open.
Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's what we're looking to do. Okay.
Your comments on the board? This is a public hearing. Any comments? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. It's a pleasure of the board.
Move approval?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. Is that it, Amy? Anything else?
No, but I think you have something before.
Do you want to go through the utility petitions with us?
Do you want to skip?
Okay. We'll open a public hearing to consider utility petition for handholds and conduit for 5 Nantucket Ave and Grant Ave. Oh, I'm sorry, Grant Ave.
Jim Huxley with National Grid Engineer. We're looking to have the customer install 2 handholds and 23 feet of conduit for new service at number 5.
Any questions or motion?
I just asked, have these already been
Oh, it's public hearing.
implemented, or are they still waiting for our approval before? Because I know we've had a problem with that in the past.
What was the question again?
Are you waiting for this approval, or has the work already been completed?
Oh, no, the work hasn't been done.
Thank you.
Any comments from the public? Okay, yep.
I'm assuming we're cutting the road since they're being encased in concrete. We're not burrowing underneath it like we have tried to get everyone to do in the past.
No, we'll be cutting the road.
I don't know why we have to cut the road every time they need to run one of these things. When I was on the board, we tried to get them to go vertically under the road. Every time they cut the road, the road falls apart. The patch never worked, and we ended up with potholes. So, I would urge the board to emphasize that we want them to burrow under the road and not cut the road.
I'm surprised DPW
Yeah,
didn't
that's a
ask
good
for that.
point.
What's that?
That's a
Sorry,
good
Jim.
point, and I know that history.
And most of the time they do. This is because I usually check it. This is the first time we haven't seen it. Do you have
Is
Erica,
there
do you
a
know
reason
anything?
because
There
of
may
where
be
the
a reason
sewer is?
why, because much of the time DPW does require under the road, not disturbing the road, but there may have been a reason why that couldn't happen in this case.
But in the absence of a comment on that, I would ask them to go back and see if they can do it under the road, or if not, have Rob tell us why they can't.
I think Eric has a comment, guys.
My understanding is that it's the DPW director that's requiring them to be encased in concrete.
On
So
public roads, yes.
it's our department's requirement.
So is the assumption that if it's in concrete, you can't bore into the road, you need to open up the road? Is that okay. Well, certainly, so maybe is this a change in kind of policy that the DPW is asking for now? Might be nice to get a clarification on that. 'cause-
Changed about a year and a half ago.
That's Rob.
Yeah, well, why would they, yeah.
Okay, excuse me, we could have the director come if you would like this explained further, but one of the reasons might be that during the sewer matter of a year ago, we found that a lot of numerous utilities under the road were not encased in concrete, and it caused a lot of issues when we were trying to get that situation repaired, so that might have something to do with it. But the idea as well is that the specs to do the patching of the road are fully enforced, and patches are done in a much different way than they used to be done. But we're happy to have the director come in and explain all of that.
I think that'd be helpful for me personally.
Okay, any other comments from the public? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Pleasure of the board.
At this time, I'd make a motion to approve it with the sewer and water comments taken into consideration.
Is there a second for discussion?
I'll second it.
I would like to get an understanding of why that has changed. There are a lot of potholes, a lot of road issues. I think that's a good point. And if there's been a change, it would be good to know why.
So we could add a friendly, or we could take a vote and see if it's voted down. And then do it
I'm happy with that as a friendly if you thought.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I thought we were going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
I thought it was clear that he was going to come in and explain it.
I think if we make it a
But I
friendly
don't want
slide,
to hold up
Yeah, make it part of the.
I could go along with that.
Okay.
Sure.
So you're approving it knowing that the director's coming in?
Asking for him to come in, yes.
to clarify.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next public hearing, open the public hearing to consider utility petition for handhold and conduits for Somerset Road. This is the same thing, encased in concrete.
Yes, we're asking the customer to install 1 handhole and 60 feet of conduit to an existing pole encased in concrete to service number 3.
This is a public hearing. Any comments from the public? Okay, question from the board before we close it? All right, we'll close the public hearing.
I'd make a motion to approve with the same comment that we're expecting an explanation from the DPW director.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. And I think that's it. Thanks, Jim. Open a public hearing to consider an application for a new annual wine and malt beverage package for meat and fish.
So you've already opened the public hearing on this back on January 30th?
So it's still open. Okay.
And so it's still open, and the applicant has requested that it be continued to April 24th. And I didn't put anything in your packet, so if you could just move to
Motion.
continue to that date.
Okay.
Motion to continue to April 24th.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
abstaining. They're customers.
Okay. Sorry. Passed. A continuation past 4-0. Matt abstaining. Public hearing to consider application for, we'll open the public hearing to consider application for new seasonal common fixtures wine and malt beverage restaurant license for Sushi 21. This is located at 21 Old South Wharf.
Correct. This applicant is for, the applicant formerly ran Sushi by Yoshi, which surrendered their license at their location in East Chestnut, in December of this year. This is going to be a new location. Normally, if this had worked out maybe time-wise, this would have just been a transfer, but that was surrendered, so this is a new license application for this applicant. It will be on Old South Wharf. It's going to be a 19-seat eat-in bar. There'll be takeout service, similar to the former operation where they had takeout service and a little eat-in area too, 19 seats in this. They're requesting a beer and wine license, seasonal, or all alcohol, I'm sorry. Oh, no, wine and malt, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just reading the wrong license. There's one other license on the wharf that is all alcohol license. It's slip 14. Restaurant wine and malt license. So to just be for on premises for those eating at the location, not for takeout. That will be separate, and there'll be no alcohol at that location. So this is for a common vicular and with liquor license. Any questions for that?
No questions? Any comments from the public? This is a public hearing. All right, we'll close the public hearing. Oh, sorry.
Somebody stood up.
Can I approach the board?
Sure, yeah.
Terry Noyes here from Sushi by Yoshi. If this opportunity did coincide with us moving, it would have been a transfer of license. And our landlord, NIR, had notified me that this space was going to become available. We've been with them for 25 years, and they're a wonderful partner for us. I would just like to say, for about 20 years or so, we did a BYOB operation, and it was very hard for us to control what people brought in, and it was very hard for us to stop someone from drinking. Whereas if we had just a license for the 8 seats that we have inside, we would be able to control this matter a little bit better. We feel that our sales in that particular location in the restaurant area is only going to be about 30% of our total sales. We're getting into catering, takeout, grab-and-go type stuff. And we just want to have the ability to serve beer and wine at a sushi bar, which is going to be about 5 seats and 1 table. I'm going to control the premise and not let anything leave. Although one of my best defensive backs, gave up a touchdown last year, it was a lesson learned, and I appeal to the board for your approval here, and I thank you in advance.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Sorry, I'll scan a little better next time. All right, we'll close the public hearing.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll open a public hearing to consider application for a new entertainment license for Sushi 21.
Yep. So this is just a license for streaming background music for the location interior only, to be in compliance with regulations for those establishments serving liquor.
Any comments from the public on this? Scanning. No, we'll close the public hearing. Pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Sorry.
Second for discussion. Yep.
I just,
sure.
without the list of all the things we did, so this has the closing the windows at 10 o'clock and all those kinds of things in here.
Well, this, I don't know, this applies down in this location with Old South Wharf. I don't think we do that. There's a location almost next door, Slip 14, that has background music. They have to stop live music earlier in the evening, but background music is allowed. I mean, it's kind of open,
Okay.
open area, so, and the property owner is fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries.
Thank you.
Town managers report. Thank you, Amy.
We talked about this a little bit last week with respect to more of a overview of the overall strategic plan. And this wasn't entirely ready last week, so there's a more detailed memo in your packet as to where we are with the parking demand management program. There has been a work group looking at various aspects of it. There's, as I mentioned, there's a pretty detailed memo in your packet. The specific goal is to launch a downtown parking management system based on demand management principles that achieves or is measured by 85% occupancy of public parking spaces. The deadline is summer 2020. The plan for this summer is to do some vendor testing sometime in early summer with a couple of vendors, see how their system works, evaluate it, and then bring some recommendations back to the board, do public outreach. There are some other related items here besides that, including at some point soon, I guess, the defining of a parking benefit district, the boundary of that. The group has looked at that. The establishment of a transportation and parking commission, which the board has previously talked about. We are planning to put that into your annual committee appointments for this year, so you'll see that in the list of the committees that you'd be appointing in June. Staffing for that commission, we do not have those resources budgeted for fiscal 20. They would have to be budgeted in 2021. And so that's something that we've got to work into our budget planning for that year. And at some point, probably if we have a fall special or the next annual, we would establish potentially an enterprise fund for the revenues that would come in with paid parking. And those can then be used in the parking benefit district for different types of expenses in that district, including improvements, staffing, administration, things like that. I don't know if Mike or Janet wants to add anything or answer any questions.
And Matt and I were on this, are on this work group, so we also can answer any questions for the board as well.
No, I just, if there's any questions about the recommended pricing mechanism for the public, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about what's being recommended as far as the program.
With this kind of technology, if you didn't have your phone on you or it was dead, is there another way to use this technology?
It's an online system, so any computer with an internet access, you could basically, just so the public knows, this is to buy additional time in addition to the time restrictions that are already in place. So not a lot's changing, just the ability to buy an extra bit of time if you need it. Log onto your smartphone like you can using the airport's system. I think they use a Park Mobile system or something to that effect. You can use your smartphone through a phone app or just go to a computer and log on and then buy additional time if you need it. If you don't have either of those, you can't find access, then the existing time restrictions apply, and there's really no penalty for staying within the time restriction area. Just you wouldn't have the luxury of getting additional time, so you'd have to abide the existing time restrictions.
Right, so nothing, so if you're stopping by the post office for 20 minutes, right, that stays the same, the 1 hour stays the same. But if somebody wants to park down there and go to dinner for 4 hours or lunch, they don't mind paying, then you can just do it on your smartphone.
Is there any sort of hybrid or opportunity where, say, you had a kiosk inside somewhere, like inside the Greenhound, or I'm just thinking if you came all the way into town for dinner and you didn't bring your phone and you don't have access to a computer, is there any way to have some limited amount of?
Yes.
Okay.
That's one thing we looked at.
Okay.
Is it 2 kiosks? Is it 4? Can we hide them in buildings? Can we, as Harvey Young says, can we put, the cedar shakes on the outside of them and hide them? But we're kind of looking at all that. I think something else that we were discussing today is how do we make projections on the parking ticket revenue that comes in? How much does that go down as the revenue goes up for the parking? And is it, it's kind of an educated guess in the beginning until we do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Not knowing what those numbers will be.
Can you pre-purchase? Can you like go on your computer at home and say, I want to buy 4 hours of time?
I don't think so. The only way we'll be able to do something like that is if we marked every parking spot downtown. And even then, I'm not even sure how.
Well, you
that would
wouldn't
work.
know where you were parking yet if you
Right.
pre-purchased.
Right.
Well, some of the questions we're asking, the details won't be clear until we have, sort of trials and have
Yeah.
people out that have the systems and understand how it works and can explain to us how it will fit here. Some of the concerns that the police have are, what is the connectivity? Will we be able to operate license plate readers and that type of thing in the system? So there's sort of hurdles that they want to have cleared, but the goal is to make this as seamless and as bulletproof as possible, and make it, make it positive for people, not punitive. Make it so that people understand that the goal of this and how it's going to work, and to be able to collect the data to make, intelligent, informed decisions as we go forward. If there's more and more demand, then how do we deal with that? So I think it's important that we get some people in and learn more of what has to happen.
Right. And parking commission would decide, is that what we're calling it? Parking commission? Have we decided what we're calling it yet?
Well, it's, in the memo, it's called Parking and Traffic Commission,
Okay.
or something like that.
So they would make recommendations and decide.
Transportation and Parking Commission.
Some communities will change it, the price structure weekly. Some will do it monthly, some will do it annually. If it's 99% occupancy versus 50, if it's 50%, it's too high. If it's 99, it's too low. We're trying to hit 85% occupancy. Not to bore everybody with all that. This kind of stuff we're digging into. And we do talk a lot with the police department trying to figure out how's this going to work, because there's been failures in the past with connectivity and how's this enforced.
All right.
We have a lot more meetings coming up.
Sounds good.
There's a question.
Yes.
Does this need town meeting approval?
No.
So people are going to wake up one day and have paid parking downtown?
Not going to wake up one day. It'll be rolled out slowly, but the parking commission and the parking district was already passed.
I
the
just
town
heard
meeting.
Mike get up and say he was going to, if anybody had any questions about the fee structure, but, I mean, there's nothing in here that says anything about fee structure or maps or anything. I mean, I know we're ways off from this, but
Yeah.
it's
We
kind
got
of,
all this next winter, and hopefully next summer something happens. That's our goal for the strategic plan anyway.
okay. Is this just the beginning and the beaches are next?
Okay. Thank you, Libby. I think that's
Anything
it.
else on that? Okay. My other item that you mentioned under new
Yep.
business earlier. Council for Surfside Crossing has requested that the town consent to allow continued representation of Surfside Crossing. And this is related to a recent affiliation with a former attorney from our current town council's firm. Town council and I discussed this, and we recommend declining the consent so that we would not consent to allowing the continued representation. They would essentially need to locate new counsel. So if anybody wants to discuss this, put it on an agenda for the future, that would be fine. There is an upcoming meeting next week, I believe, that it would be good to know ahead of time of that. And if the board is seeming to be in consensus about that, then between town council and I, we will let them know that we're declining that.
So are you asking for us to, is that a recommendation you're asking us to take action
Well-
on, or is it an administrative decision you're going to communicate?
I guess I would call it an administrative decision that I'm going to communicate.
Okay,
Unless the board, any member of the board objects.
okay. I have no objection. I think it makes sense.
Any other comments from the board?
No.
Okay.
Will this be discussed in more depth some other time, or is this the end of it?
Sounds like it's the end of it, unless you want to
Okay.
talk about it. We can talk about it.
I mean, I'm just asking, so if we do this tonight, we're done.
Yep.
Okay. So I think people, I guess, I guess I'd like to sort of give the short version, or should we give the short version? I'm asking a question
Fine, yeah.
to the public. I think there's some members of the public who are kind of, sort of, watching this and sort of not understand what we're doing. Do you want to do that, John? Or? Sure. Yeah.
So as you know, Libby has explained that we received, that is, town council received a request from Attorney Friedman, first notifying us that a former attorney at KP Law, who was Attorney Quirk, she left our firm about 6 or 8 months ago, and recently it was determined that she has an affiliation with Attorney Friedman, and under the rules of professional responsibility, of course, she has an obligation not to reveal any confidential information that she gleaned while she was representing the town of Nantucket on this matter. And as we all know, Attorney Quirk did quite a bit of work initially on the Surfside matter. We have no reason to doubt that Attorney Quirk would abide by the highest professional standards, and it has been represented to us that by Attorney Friedman that, of course, Attorney Quirk is not involved at all in representing Surfside on this matter. Nevertheless, in discussions with the town manager, we thought that given the high-profile nature of this application and the public interest in ensuring that there is no confidential information used or any perception that anything is improper, we thought it was best that, and we did recommend to the town manager that the town not to consent, which means that Attorney Friedman, who, by the way, offered to withdraw his counsel unless the town consented, we thought that was best for the town and in order to protect the integrity, if you will, of the ZBA process.
Thank you.
Yes, so we will notify Attorney Friedman that the town does not consent, and I think it was important to get that to him before the next hearing, which I believe is it a week from tonight? It's next week sometime.
Next Tuesday, I think.
So that he can take that action.
Can you just talk about the concept? I mean, from their perspective, I know you can't predict what they're going to do, but so this would be effective tonight? They're withdrawing, or upon notification by you?
Well, we will notify them tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay. So that,
and presumably he will then file a notice of withdrawal.
Okay.
Before or at the time of the next hearing, and will not participate.
And what does that do to the process? Does that give them any additional more time to find a new lawyer? Are there notifications to the state, whatever state agency is?
There are no other notifications that I'm aware of. This is really a question of the rules of professional responsibility that apply to all attorneys. Frankly, attorneys, of course, have an obligation to make sure that even when they're withdrawing as counsel, that the client is not going to be jeopardized, if you will, or disadvantaged by that. So I'm sure that I don't know this, but I would assume that Attorney Friedman has discussed this with his client, and that there's agreement on their side. He wouldn't have made that notification and request for consent if this had not been worked out beforehand.
And so there'd be no ongoing, and I'm just asking because we get questions. So there'd be no ongoing kind of communication, dialogue between the outgoing and the incoming attorneys on this matter?
Well, I can't answer that. I mean, I don't know, but I would assume not.
Okay.
Once you withdraw as counsel, you're
good.
done.
Yep, good.
And again, regardless of that, there is just one of the most important things for an attorney is to not reveal confidential attorney communications unless you happen to be in the unfortunate position of having to provide legal advice on camera at town meeting in front of the television. So that's always a challenge for us. That doesn't apply in other circumstances.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Good questions. Any other thoughts on this? Board feel comfortable?
Absolutely. Thank you for doing that.
Thanks, Matt, for asking that. Okay, on to select board's reports and comments. The first one is continued discussion on the marijuana request for qualifications. Review committee. Report for co-located adult use marijuana retail establishments, medical marijuana dispensary, and a potential vote to award the RFQ. Just to set the stage tonight, Don and I talked a lot about this, how to structure this evening, and we're not going to allow any public comment, just to keep it clean. If the board has any questions for the applicants, for staff, then we obviously can do that. But the questions will be driven by us. But if anybody raises their hands, I'm not going to call on you. I just want to set that up right now. Libby is going to just give us just a brief kind of what we asked for last week, what was additionally put in the packet.
So at your last meeting.
Can I just ask?
Sure.
So just, just a comment on that process, which I think is great. I don't know if it's appropriate. I just would ask you if we could also avoid the back and forth between the councils of the various parties. I know that if I ask a question and we get an answer and then the other party stands up and gives an alternative answer. We saw that this afternoon with kind of dueling letters between legal counsels on this matter, and it's kind of like who got the last letter in, and I just, if we could avoid that, that would be helpful.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. I think 2 weeks ago we set that up where if you're coming to the microphone to speak only about yourself and not the other applicant, and that went really well. Everybody, 95% behaved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Libby?
At the board's last meeting on March 6th, there was a request for additional information as to the marijuana RFQ committee's composite ratings specific to the sort of minority views. So that is in your packet. The board also agreed that if members had specific questions, those were to be forwarded to myself, Jason, or Rita. I did receive some from Matt. Those questions are answered. And some of that is also resulted in attachments to your packet, specifically the additional financial business plan template that we asked for, as well as there was some discussion about what local residency really means, and one of our members did a rather detailed analysis of basically looking at if people were registered to vote, or if they were in the street list, or if they had a Nantucket address, and that's all in a pretty detailed spreadsheet. So we just tried to get you as much as we could that you might not have had before. We also I just want to acknowledge there's a lot of paperwork that came with this process, and pretty much all of it is online. Not that the board or necessarily anybody would be expected to wade through all that. We've tried to summarize wherever possible, but it's not that easy. So the bottom line, I think, is that both proposers are pretty closely rated by the committee.
I do have one question on this analysis of the residency, and I want to address it to Act Natural so they can address it to the rest of the board. There's one name on here on your advisory board that's someone who's in active litigation with the town, and just wanted to see how you're going to handle that.
Mike Sullivan from Act Natural. I was not aware of that. We are now aware of that, and he has resigned from the board. I just want to let you know that as, we want to work at the will of the town with this process, and as things do come up and as this process morphs, we're willing to do whatever it takes moving forward. So as this came to light, we were able to address it, and, as other things come to light, we'll be able to address it moving forward too.
Thank you.
All right, how do we want to go about this? We can go right into motions. I can throw some options out. Is there anything in the packet?
Options. Options sound great.
Well,
I think
we
if
heard-
there's any questions that the board has, if
Yeah.
this has answered them.
I recall that we got from town council at some point what our options were and different actions we could take. I don't know if it'd be helpful to hear those again. I think it was, take no action. Do you remember that conversation where you kind of talked about what our...
No, I think they are to award it to one applicant, to not award it to either applicant, to create another process, to not award it, but to create another, whatever process that would be. And then to take no action, nothing.
Okay.
Right, and
Yeah.
that's, a motion could be for one applicant, and it could be defeated, and then if that's the last motion, then there's nothing there, right? So we did look into taking a paper ballot, a little like we do with the commissions and committees, and that didn't really make sense. And that was not good for open meeting law.
If there's no questions, I would possibly break it down into two motions. So I'd make a motion to award the license tonight. And then if that passes, then we can, does that work, Erica, or no?
I just want to clarify, are we awarding a license or are we awarding the RFQ?
The host community agreement, yes.
To
So
go
an
into
HCA.
To go into negotiations with an HCA, correct?
So that would be the actual.
For adult rec.
Okay. Well, I was just making sure that that would be an acceptable way to do it, where it's moving it forward to award one this evening, and then a second motion would be to a specific applicant. So,
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
I'd like the board to consider with the closeness of whether we want to award one tonight. I'm good with that, but whether we want to initiate allowing a third license by taking it to town meeting.
So I guess on the motion, we spend a lot of time on here developing a process that this board, and I think we're the accountable party to develop the process. I think it was an excellent process. A lot of work was done to it. And the process determined that the applicants were of equal value, whatever. The process didn't identify a likely or preferred applicant. But that was the intention of the process, to do that. So in the absence of that, I think we have to think about, maybe going back and saying, well, maybe it was a flawed process and we need to, I don't know what, but I can't put myself in the place of the people who have spent an inordinate amount of time interviewing candidates, reviewing hundreds of pages. I just can't do that, because all I'm going to do is kind of respond to things I hear or people who call me and lobby and those kind of things. I think it's just more important that we do that. So I guess I would concur with at least one individual here who has a lot of experience, who said maybe we just wait 6 months to see how the Green Lady works out. We don't know the implications of all the things we've been concerned about. And as you know, because it's just my background, I still have health concerns about the health and the impact of marijuana. I'm not here to debate that, but there was the Lancet, which is the kind of a preeminent British medical journal, yesterday published, and I sent it to the board, some evidence linking not necessarily the incidents, but but later stage psychosis and schizophrenia with certain types of marijuana use in Europe, and they've had more experience. And so, again, I'm not trying to debate that, but I would just encourage the board to not adopt this motion and to kind of wait and see how Green Lady works out.
So just to clarify, the motion is to award it tonight, not to anyone specific.
Correct.
So you're just starting
Correct.
very basic.
Yeah, and I
Right.
do want to acknowledge Jim's comments because this is something that I have thought about a lot and gone back and forth on, and looking at the process that we have. Having been a part of the review committee, and this was something that I had asked John Giorgio at the last meeting that we had on this, was what we're bound to making our decision based on, and whether it was the RFQ. And I think the review committee really stuck to the RFQ items. But for me, having gone through the process, there is the way the candidates presented themselves, the way they behaved, looking at who we want to be in business with. For me, that is also part of the process. It's an interview process where you're understanding who you're working with. So that's why I do feel like I am ready to award. But I do understand your sentiments, Jim. Dawn, in regards to the third license, I feel that, no, the process did not come out with one clear winner. There are two very equal based on our RFQ candidates. I think that for me, I wouldn't want to open it up to 3 because we have 2 good candidates, but because we felt that that was the best thing for the community or the next step. So I don't necessarily agree that we should be considering opening up to 3 or more than that now. Maybe this cannabis work group that we've discussed, that can be something that they can look at, but I wouldn't be ready to do that now.
And thank you, Rita. And you're absolutely right. You get a kind of a gut feel with presentations from people. You look at their passion. You just look at how they communicate with each other. But I wasn't a part of that. I don't know how many board members were on that work group, and that really, I won't say that's puts me at a disadvantage of not having that, not being able to make that observation, which I think would really go into my decision about. So again, that's why I think for all of us, it's we're not on the same playing field as board members.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah, I expressed that last time, Jim, when we talked about it.
Okay.
I don't
That
know
must
if
have been the meeting I was on.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
That was one of the reasons we didn't move anything forward. And yeah, I was really concerned that we didn't get a recommendation from the people who spent a long time reviewing it. And I was in the camp of maybe we should wait, but I've talked to so many people outside of this within the community since, and people want some competition in the industry. I mean, that's part of, I'm not crazy about the limitation at all. I much more of a school of thought for a free market. And that's why I would definitely support going to 3 or just lifting the limitation altogether. But I feel like people really want another facility to be open by next summer. And the only way that's going to happen is to award a license. And that's why I'm more on board to actually award a license tonight. And I think that both candidates would be good partners for the town.
I also reflected quite a bit on again, some of those outside the immediate people involved in this, and got a general sense of, people being concerned about where our attention is going. As the town, we have so many things on our list. This has been an onerous process and taken up a lot of time. When I did hear that a lot of people don't want one, and they do want competition. So really reflecting again on what was expected when we did have the vote at town meeting.
I would agree that competition is healthy, and whether it's the cannabis advisory group or the next board decides to try to take the limitation off, add a third, it could easily be done. I think that's, we'll know more, I think, through the summer, whether we open that up or not. Do we need any more? Go ahead, go ahead, Matt.
The whole competition thing, I think we're sort of losing fact of, part of the reason that we want to go slow is so that we can make our best efforts to build more of an industry underneath this for the, foreseeable 3 to 5 years before the federal government makes it legal all the way around. I think, so that's, so anyway, I mean, and hopefully that committee will, dig into some of those issues. I'm sort of, I think you're onto something, Rita. When you say, sort of someone said a gut feeling, I'll talk from, 40 years, 35 years of business experience. Every time that I've sort of gone against my gut instinct, I've regretted it, half a year later. Every time I've had to work really hard to make something work, or didn't look forward to that phone call, I've regretted it later. It's happened 2 or 3 times, over my career, maybe 5 times. I made more than 3 mistakes, but it happens, and it really, that's what it ends up being sometimes. If you're partnering with someone, you have to feel that. You have to, and when you don't, you should really think hard about it. Even if the numbers say something else, or the shiny brochure says something else. So I think what you're onto is really important, and it's not appreciated enough sometimes.
We ready to take a vote on the motion?
Can I just note one thing?
Yep.
I guess it sounded like Rita made a motion before and Matt seconded it, so you already have two motions.
Two motion?
Well,
Like, we're
Rita
just-
said she wanted to talk about awarding an RFQ tonight, and then a motion to award to a specific application, and Matt, you seconded.
I seconded the vote tonight, so.
So only the one, but that was never voted on.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, we're still in discussion for,
Yeah.
Just making sure.
Yeah, so we're in discussion on that first one, so.
on the first one?
On, that we want to award it tonight.
Yeah,
Is
right.
that a yes or a no?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where I am.
Right. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
I was in
Okay.
favor.
What's that?
Yeah, I'm in favor.
Okay, so it passed 4-1. Okay, so we're going to award it tonight.
I mean, this is also an opportunity to ask questions. So Jim, I know, it's not the equivalent of 6 meetings on the review committee, but it is an opportunity, I think, if you do have some questions of the candidates.
Right. Okay, if there's no questions, is there a motion or any discussion?
I'd make a motion, if there's no questions, I'd make a motion to award to move on to negotiations with an HCA with AC Natural.
I'll second that.
Discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain. So it passes 4-0. Any other motions that we would like to make? For limitation, to explore anything, consensus?
I mean, I'd like to continue to think about what we might want to bring forth at the next town meeting.
Whether that's special or next annual.
And I would like to do that after, after the committee has.
We're establishing
Yeah.
that committee,
Yeah.
I think, in June.
To make sure the work is done and not to,
Yeah.
And
And,
at the same sometime, we might want to see what happens here with one open now this summer, or a couple open next summer. We'll have a lot more information at that point. I think, limitations, an open market sounds great, but there's flaws sometimes when you have an open market, because, we're not going to issue 300 liquor licenses. We're not, there's a certain limit where, you get a little bit over, and then you're forcing these businesses to really compete and go, do it differently and do it aggressively. And that's, we're like, I don't know if I told this, but I went to Colorado with my son. Otherwise, he wasn't going to leave the house, I didn't think, this year, and dropped him off. And he was, And it was struck me as that we were sort of repeating the mistakes we made with liquor, where it was considered it was considered medical and it was the greatest thing. And I'm looking at the names of some of these marijuana shops and it's Healthy Living and the Green Goddess and the this and that, like it's a wonder drug. And I'm looking going, it's a pot shop, it's a marijuana shop. I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm saying, let's call it what it is. There are gonna be positives and negatives to this, and I think, we're sort of repeating as a society the mistakes that we made with liquor. And I hope that, we smarten up on it in some way and that people realize that it's a lot stronger than it used to be and it's a lot different thing than it used to be. And there's a lot of serious issues, which I think some of my employees have had. And so, I think this is not, to be taken lightly. And I hope that, we as a society, are smart about it and teach our kids that this isn't harmless. So, anyway.
I kind of want to throw out there kind of next steps of negotiating HCA. What do we need to, do we really need to get on the Cannabis Advisory Committee? How do we get that going? What do we need to know? I think I've heard from the board, from many of us over this last 2 years, that we want, on the local side of things, the kind of craft cultivation from smaller farmers, if that's possible. How do we do that? How is that done now with 2 licenses? Right.
And that was something, that was really, the last one, the craft cultivation, is what spurred the conversation around forming a group, in addition to the Citizens article. And I do think that is very important as an initial focus, but I think also there's questions around HCAs, what they look like, options the board has in terms of other licenses like cultivation licenses, any of the processing licenses, things like that. So I think getting the work group together as quickly as possible so that we can start checking off the boxes on the things that we need to look at. And education being also one of them. What's the best way to not do it the same way we've done it and to make sure that we're doing our best to guard mental health and wellness at the same time.
Any other thoughts?
That sounded really good.
Once a month, I've got something like that.
Okay, committee reports. Anybody got anything?
Affordable Housing Trust met, and we're focusing on, we've got some excellent information coming back from the Nantucket data platform, and we'll be using that for some information that we'll have at town meeting. We are working through our implementation plan, and then we're also focusing on the strategic plan update that we'll be having next week. We also did start to discuss some of the numbers around short-term rental tax and some, how some of that could be allocated towards the Affordable Housing Trust. And we ultimately decided to wait and see what happens at town meeting. There are several items there between the citizen article, the funding request, and the short-term rental tax itself. So that will be coming up afterwards. And then we also had a meeting with the Bay State Wind developers today, and they're 14 miles from Martha's Vineyard and 17.7 miles from Nantucket. They're the lease site that's furthest to the west, so closest to the vineyard and the mainland. And they gave us presentation on simulations. So these simulations are going to be important. And they've given us a range of simulations depending on the size of the turbines that they put in. And they haven't finalized the size of the turbines yet. But they were very professional. They've been working with the fishermen, accommodating the fishermen, working with communities on the way to their landing point, which is in Baynard Point. I can't quite remember, but up the Sakonnet River.
This CPC set the date for their annual forum. It's going to be May 21st, and it's going to be at NISDA. I believe it's at 4 o'clock, but I'll announce that as we get closer. It's going to be out at NISDA.
Oh, wow.
Where a lot of money's been donated at the last couple of years. Yes. Yep. The silos were redone, if people haven't seen them, and now they're working on some of the barns under historic preservation.
Nice. And NPDC met Monday. They voted unanimously to support Tobias's article at the housing article at town meeting. They liked the comments that we made on that. They also voted to support, in BPAC today, voted to support the bike path article. And after Ian had made some amendments to it. So I thought both of those were interesting. And the bike path might even go back to FinCom prior to town meeting. I think Ian has made some good changes to it that I think will be well received. The other thing, just sort of long-range sort of thoughts. If anyone's is on Facebook, I'm not, but my wife showed me, and there's some stuff falling in from Tom Nevers onto the bluff, and some, it's an old foundation that is sort of being uncovered slowly over time and falling, and we're gonna have to clean it up, and there's a bunch more there. And then it just, so we've got resiliency, and we've got the landfill and what we're gonna do, and we're looking at projections on what will happen in Nantucket, and it got me thinking about that whole area, and I said, well, wait a minute, what's gonna happen when we have in my head, I'm saying Nantucket's gonna be Nantucket will end up being an island at some point, and it's going to, in those ponds are going to start to be part of the ocean. There'll be some flow through there if you look at some of the state projections and the, things that are going on. And I start wondering, is that going to be the landfill? Are we going to be either armoring the landfill or digging it out really quickly, because what's going to happen when all this plastic releases into the, into the environment? And so, it's sort of putting those two things together. I think we have to be thinking 50, 100 years out, and so it may inform our decisions, because we're talking about how to handle it now. Maybe the landfill should be moving, partly because of resiliency factors. Maybe we shouldn't be putting $16, $20 million into making it permanent when it's going to be oceanfront in 40, 50 years, some period of time. And it was just a thought I had. I'm just, I don't have all the answers on it, but it was just sort of interesting that it all kind of coalesced.
Which is why we talked for a while last week about coastal resiliency and having staff dedicated to it and making it a huge part of our conversation.
Yeah. I think that is exactly the issue, is understanding where we're most vulnerable and then how we allocate our funds.
I just had one thing. Matt took the BPAC away from me. It was the amendments that Ian made really make sense, and I think it's going to make everybody feel a little more comfortable with it. And that $80,000 cost of moving the signs and all that would be reduced to very little or nothing, depending on how it's handled. And then also today, town officials and some select board members met with Stop and Shop, the district manager, their sustainability director, a couple of their managers, and walked around the store, and they kind of showed us everything that they've done this last year, things that they're working on. It was just a nice kind of opportunity for us to ask a lot of questions. They approached us on this weeks ago, and kind of in kind of a proactive way, because the single-use plastics ban is coming online, assuming Attorney General approves it in June of 2020. So it was refreshing and nice to build that relationship. It was very collaborative, and they listened, and they had good answers for some of my questions.
How much did they take off the island? What did they say? Was it 500 tons?
So this is something we learned today. So they have a facility in Freetown where everything that is all of their waste, they don't dump it here on the island. They take it all to Freetown, and so we're almost 500 tons a year. I think that, and they said they would actually give us the exact numbers on that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be interested to see what if that went to our landfill.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The diversion. And then they do have bins out front where they are taking back some of the waste. So it is that element of corporate responsibility, where things like the plastic bags that your apples or your produce comes in, they'll take those back.
So it might not be the effort of what everybody wants, but there was definitely, I was impressed.
Yeah, but they were also open about their challenges. That if the stuff if the right things aren't put in the, into the right bin, it goes off island and it gets buried or thrown away again. So it's still not perfect. And they're, one of their big concerns again is water. The smaller water bottles and how much they sell and what demand there is and what's the replacement. It's not, I think it was a very good thing to do.
Tahoe has a program called Take Care, and it has to do with keeping things clean and recycling, but they have one of their signs says one man's trash is another man's trash. And it's that idea that if we don't sort it here, someone has to sort it somewhere, or it will just end up in the landfill. And I do want to say I was delighted to hear that there have been no complaints about the paper straws. So they have switched over to paper straws, and there haven't been any complaints. So it's
I think
good.
there was one complaint from a
Crafts.
a craft party or something.
Yeah. Okay, one complaint from crafts, but
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
sorry, after.
A
Jim.
comment, and DPW director's not here, but I just want to say that how easily we can be shuffled into the appropriate lanes with those just very little thin little boards that are out on the intersection of Old South Road and Fairgrounds. And it was a real nice way to test something on a small scale, which I thought was great.
People definitely have to remember that it's not the scale that it would really be.
that's a
Right.
good point. It would be,
Because
it's going to
there's
be
a lot
bigger.
of buzz.
Yeah.
But from my understanding, talk to them, it's not that much bigger. It's in this, it's like 5 feet bigger or something. It's not, I was shocked that it wasn't as large, it's the size it is. And it might have to be moved a little bit or be a little bit bigger, and so it's good to test it, and it's not that much money.
yeah.
People complain what the cost, and it's like, what, 15 grand or something to do what they've done, give or take, and it's more if we tried to make it a little more permanent. I think it's a great thing to do,
Yeah.
before spending $1 million or $2 million,
Yeah.
do this and see. I mean, I think it's, I think it's a really good, exercise on his part, so. We should. I think we should, and that would tell us, so.
I watched two tractor trailers coming down Old South Road take a left on Fairgrounds Road, and they were fine.
Really?
Wow.
Now, they had to
Cool.
go through the middle,
Yeah.
Okay.
but,
Yeah.
yeah, they drove over the middle, but all the big trucks drove over the middle, where smaller cars would just stay in their lane. So it would have to be bigger, and, at BPAC today, people were, who know the trailers would say there'd have to be some modifications. This is why we're doing it.
But people drive over the roundabout now.
Right.
Yeah.
It was built
Right.
for that.
Right.
So,
Can I mention
Yeah.
something? I
Yeah.
forgot to mention in the town manager report. Just wanted to remind people that if they're interested in getting some more information about town meeting warrant articles, in addition to the numerous places where you can get it on the town website and social media and some videos and the newspaper, we do have a couple of public informational sessions scheduled. One is tomorrow from 4:30 to 5:30 in this building. It's for zoning. It's a drop-in. It's not taped. It's very casual. If you have any questions about any of the zoning articles, the zoning town staff will be available tomorrow. The next one is the 28th, next Thursday, same time, 4:30 to 5:30 here, and other staff will be available. Just if you have questions, it's just meant to be a casual, tell me about whatever article or whatever other questions you have about town meeting. And I think you're doing some at the Handlebar. Or
tomorrow.
allowing people
From
to come
11:30
in
to
and
1, just
talk,
drop
yeah.
in. Leslie Snell will be there tomorrow to answer any zoning questions.
And the Civic League is doing something this weekend, right?
Yes, Civic League is doing Meet the Articles this weekend. Thank you for reminding. It's 1 to 3 here in this room. And myself, the finance director, and FinCom chair, as well as numerous other people are here to explain their articles, answer questions, stuff like that.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Just a question, is the culverts, I missed the culvert presentation on Thursday, is it on the town website? Report?
It's going to be, yes. It might not be up there right this moment, but it's going to get up there.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.
Jim, I want you to know, I paid for the last. This is, you have to sign every page.